Happy April 24th. Welcome back to Adventures in Business. Mandy, what is going on today?
Oh, for goodness sakes, Amani. I slept awful last night. I'm a great sleeper. I get 8 hours of sleep every night. That's like my thing I have to do. Otherwise, I can't function. And last night I slept the worst night of rest I've ever had, I think, in my life. I
No.
woke up suddenly to my dog barking at something up front, and my heart was just pounding. Then I couldn't fall asleep for another hour and a half, and then I fell asleep. I had an awful dream, woke back up to my heart pounding. I was like being chased by Russians. There was a lot of
Oh,
coding. There was
goodness.
codes involved. I had the secret codes. Then I
Jesus.
fell back asleep, and then I woke back up to my heart pounding. It was just like one nightmare after the other. And then I woke up. I'm like, oh, now I have to start my day.
Yeah.
So if you see, I've got some baggies, little baggies under my
It's
eyes.
okay.
But this is real. This is the
It's
real
real.
deal. And
Yeah.
that's what's going on. What about you? How'd you sleep
Yeah.
last night, Amani?
It's funny you say that. Last night I slept well, but I think it was Monday or
Oh,
Tuesday night. I was playing around the internet before I went to bed and I saw something that messed my mind up. So that caused me to lose sleep too. But the last few nights have been better. So I slept better. But I can understand how lack of sleep or just you see things, you have bad dreams. So let's hope for you tonight will be a much more peaceful night of sleep.
thank you. I will
Yeah.
take all those hopes and dreams. I appreciate that.
You are welcome. Now, for today, tell us a little bit about our guest today, and then we can bring him on from the green room. Who are we talking to today?
Ooh, we got a guy who's got a lot of interesting talents. We have TJ Boyd. He is a dad. He has a podcast on fatherhood. He
Okay.
is a writer. He is an author. He is a real estate person. And I think we're only scratching the surface on all of his talent. So I think we should bring him up so we can start asking him
Okay.
about all of it.
All right, TJ Voigt, welcome in. We'll give you a round of applause. Picture place there.
Hey, TJ.
Welcome in. Welcome to Adventures in Business. How are we doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm always appalled when I get a round of applause on the way in. I never know what
Yeah.
to do with it. But
Just accept it. Say, I
yeah,
accept
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
applause.
appreciate it. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
don't mess it up. Don't mess up,
Hey,
TJ.
there
Don't
you
press.
go. That's the pressure, right? That's the
Yeah.
pressure.
So when Mandy introduced you, what did she miss? What did she leave out in terms of everything involved with TJ Void?
Man, my wife asked the same question. Like, what is all this? But I think it all falls under the same umbrella of service, right?
Mm.
And everything that I do has a backstory to it. But I think she covered it all. Fatherhood podcast that it's been on hiatus for a little while. We had some technical difficulties that we're getting smoothed out. Real estate I do as well. That's kind of like my quote unquote 9 to 5.
Hmm.
And I'm a writer and an author, right?
Okay.
So those are the three things that I've narrowed it down to,
Okay.
from this wide range of things that I do.
Now, working in real estate, I'm a
Mhm.
former real estate agent back on the East Coast, so I have a little bit of knowledge. I grew up in real estate. Both my parents sold it. What do you do? Residential, commercial lending? Like, what's your role in real estate, and how did you get involved first in the industry?
A good question. I do residential real estate for the time being. And the reason why I got involved is one of my mentors, he's big into real estate on the investment side.
Mm,
And I've seen this guy go from, so I knew his son prior to him and his son's mother getting married, right? And so I met them when I was probably 8 or 9, and we talk still regularly even now, and I'm 39 now. um but he was big on the investment side, and so I saw the benefits of it. I never wanted to be in the sales at all. I was actually in education. I was a teacher coach, and then I
mhm,
was a principal. Um but my wife and I, to answer your question, my wife and I went to buy a home in 2016. We started the home search, and it was just not good.
mm,
I mean, you see the homes on the internet, right? Because we're searching Zillow. We figure we don't want, like most people think, I'm not gonna get an agent because that's gonna cost me money, which is
right.
not true, by the way. As a buyer, you don't pay the agent, so don't worry about it. But we were looking, and we would show up to places, and it'll smell like cats, or
Hmm.
the pictures were airbrushed to oblivion. Um, and so we finally decided on a new build. And my wife, we sold the whole, hey, you get such and such amount of money at the design center. You get $15,000. We're like, okay, cool. And then she went to the design center, and that bought you like door handles.
Ah.
You know, 'cause
The old $15,000 door handle.
because nobody in my family had ever owned a home, in my immediate family. I didn't grow up in houses that my parents paid mortgage in.
Mhm.
So I had no idea that when you buy a house, you literally just buy the house, not the blinds, not anything.
Mhm.
And so we were able to get out of that, and just by chance, we showed up at a home that she liked because they had a pool. And the real estate agent met us there, and after 6 months of searching with him, we found a house in 2 weeks. And it just always kind of stuck with me that I'm like, man, if people only knew the power that they had, and the ability that they hold to just own land, own property, and what that does for your life, and the potential that that has. And that's one of the few guaranteed appreciating assets that you could possibly have in your portfolio. Then that will be good for me. And then I became a head coach, and it kind of went to the back burner. 2017 was a whirlwind. We bought a house, we got married, and we had a baby. So I went. so,
Just a couple changes, just a couple
so
changes.
so I started January as a single, engaged, but single, fatherless dude living in an apartment. And by December 2017, I was a married father and a homeowner.
All
And
sorts of tax write-offs in 2017.
oh, it was awesome. It was awesome.
Right.
But yeah, so the stress of going through it without much guidance and experience kind of pushed me to that. And then when the pandemic hit, I had time to study for it and go through the process. And so that's how I landed there. So it's been a lot to learn. Um, I'm not necessarily a salesman by nature. I'm more of a helper, a nurturer, which helps me, right? Because there's a lot of people who don't know. And so just kind of you end up being like friends with your clients a lot of times, because you're with them and in a part of their life for so long. And the process can be intrusive, like you definitely can't hide money or
Mhm,
debt. So
mhm.
everything is public knowledge at that point. So yeah, that was a long-winded way of saying I got in it just to kind of help people not be stressed out through the process.
Well,
Yeah.
I love this. You've dropped a lot of nuggets. So
You did. You did.
okay, so
I have a follow-up, just
you
and I'll
go,
let
you
you go
go.
next, because
Okay.
you said something about how, this first time you've owned a home in your family.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in the public are kind of saying that buying a home isn't a good investment anymore. They're like, just rent, you'll save your money. Like, that's a movement out there. I disagree. I've owned, homes. I own my current home. It's not easy, but I feel it's one of the few, as you just said, guaranteed kind of appreciating assets. What is your thought on the movement where people are like, don't buy a home, just rent and use your money for other things? What is your kind of response to that? And then you can go, Mandy.
Marvin,
Thanks.
Well, yeah, I had
that's
yeah,
that's a, that's a
I
great
was I
question.
was hung up on that one too. I got a couple on that. Yeah.
Yeah, my question to them, my follow-up question would be, use your money for what? Because you're
Hmm.
paying mortgage, you're just not paying yours. And if someone is renting you their home, it's going to be mortgage plus, right? Because they're not renting it just for the heck of it. They're renting it because it is also money stream. It's a stream of income for them.
Yes.
And the higher the rates are, quote unquote, think about living in an apartment, right? You can live in the exact same apartment when your lease is up, and when you go to the lease office, they probably raise your rent. And it's the same concept because you have to keep up with inflation. You have to keep up with the interest rates, which, by the way, no one can predict. It's just
Right.
it's one of those things that you just have to kind of stay afloat while you can. But
Right.
I would say it depends on your situation. It's much like leasing a car. In Texas, it doesn't make sense to lease a car because you can drive an hour from Houston to Houston. So, so you may, so
Oh,
if you're on the road a lot, if you work from home, then okay. But if you're on the road a lot, you got to have a car that's yours. And so if you're in a job that's mobile, you'll be moving a lot, maybe rent. But if you're kind of established and you think you'll be there for a while, if you think you'll be there for, I would say, at least 2 to 3 years, then it would be wise to look into buying, because at the end of the day, you can probably sell that house and make a profit, or
yes.
refinance and pull cash out. Like, there's so many options that you have as an owner that you just don't have as a tenant. Not to mention the human element of the owner of the house can just walk in one day and say, "Hey, y'all gotta go."
Yes.
So
Hmm.
Yes.
Truth. Yeah.
Okay. Over to you, Mandy. Thank you for allowing me to sneak that one in there.
Oh, well, I know. Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, TJ makes it easy. You've got so many nuggets. Okay, I want to build on that question that Amani asked. Is like you said that you were the first person in your family to buy a home.
mhm.
So, what does that mean for you? Because I know in my family, I'm from Ohio. I'm one of four, but we have a huge family. And there was a lot of things that I was the first person to do in my family. And that
Mhm.
meant a lot to me, but it also came with a little bit of a blessing and a burden. So I want to ask you, like, what does that mean to you? You're the first person to own a home
Mhm.
in your family. Like, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to your family? What does that mean to your kids? Like, what is that for you?
So I often makes fun of my son, because I mean, making fun of people is a love language, right? So
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
so I make fun of him because I'm like, dude, you've never even eaten ramen noodles. Like, your life is way too lavish. Okay. But growing up, I moved 12 times in 10 years. And it was, you don't know. As a kid, you don't know your struggles. It's just regular
Yeah,
life. You think
yeah.
this is just how it is. Like, parts of it sucks, but whatever. Um, but for me to own a home, it didn't really hit me until my mom came to visit, and she actually saw kind of where me and my wife lived, how we live, that we actually have a back patio,
Mhm.
and that we pay a mortgage, and it actually sparked her to want to move here and own a home. And my mom lives and works in Kuwait right now. She works for the military.
Oh,
um
wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was actually the first one out of my immediate family again to have a college degree as well. So my
Mhm.
mom graduated from college after I did. But that's been kind of my role in my family. I'm the baby, but I was always the one to look around and say, "Nah." Like, like
Yeah.
this can't be it, right? I've
Right.
been the dreamer my entire life. I thought I was going to be in the NBA, but I've always been the one to, I've been the creative one to write things and draw things, and I wanted to be a preacher when I was a kid.
Okay. All right.
Because
Gotta
I
ask
just, I guess, I guess, I
ask
guess I just
boy.
had dreams, right? I guess I've always had dreams. God just kind of put in me to touch people. I really care about people, and so to answer your question, owning a home for me just kind of sets up part of what I do is it's a legacy piece for me. And owning a home, you learn more about owning a home, and you learn about families who keep at least one owned home in their family,
Yes.
so that
Yes.
you can have some sort of fallback, right? Like, hey,
Mhm.
you're out of college and all of a sudden you've been doing one thing for 17, 18 years, which is going to school. Because we know college is like the pseudo real world. It's not actually
That's
the
right. It's
real world.
practice how to do your
And
laundry. Yeah.
then you
Mhm.
walk across the stage after your graduation and you're like, what now? And you have to enter the world. And I think that this, at the very least, owning a home gives, my son and my family lineage, our family lineage, a hub to where they can at least have a huddle ground to figure it out. And for me, I have nieces and nephews that are graduating and that have graduated. Like my oldest niece, excuse me, is actually coming to stay with us during the summer, and
Ooh.
getting some internship hours. And had I not owned a home, that would have not even been possible. And she came here not too long ago, last summer, and it inspired her. Like, she was struggling with just life things, and she was like, man, I see how Uncle TJ and my wife, Aunt Tina, lives, and she's been on her stuff ever since. Straight A student, just got a scholarship at school, and it means more. The house means more. Let me check that. The home, having a home, and knowing that you
There we
don't have to
go.
move out at the end of the year, or have to, we were poor enough to where we didn't even have suitcases. Like, we just had trash bags, and getting
Yeah.
evicted and stuff like that is something that you
Yeah.
never want to be a part of. So that's something I didn't want to pass on to my family. And luckily, I have my wife that was on board with it as well.
So you're an inspiration. You're an inspiration. Okay. Now another nugget. I just want to switch gears to basketball because I know basketball is a big part of your life. We just had a while back, we had the Final Four in
Mhm.
Houston, Final Two and Final Four in Houston, where you live. And we're coming into the NBA playoffs. So can you just share your basketball history and then how are you feeling now with all of these things happening surrounding you and you're not playing basketball?
I'll answer it in reverse. At the
Ooh.
end, I have
Okay.
no idea what to do with my time. Like, for basketball, the reason why I don't play basketball regularly, and I just started back actually, is because my brain is the same. So my brain is like, murder this dude, press him full court, crush his will. My body is like, we ain't doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, those 2 need to sync up a little bit before you get back on the court. Yeah.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
mind to muscle connection is just not there. But for me, I started playing basketball. My father actually introduced me to the game when I was 7. And living in Texas, man, not playing football is sacrilegious,
Hmm.
But I actually come from the time where, two-a-days was a thing. And if you ever been in Texas in August, you don't want to be outside. You definitely don't want to go outside twice. I just decided, this is just not for me. And basketball, I took to it early. I figured it out kind of early, and it's just something that I truly, truly, truly love. And honestly, basketball and being involved in basketball is probably responsible for about 85% of my relationships that I have now. Just
That's
because
interesting.
the basketball world is very small, but the tentacles are extremely long, because you meet 15 people a year on your team, and those 15 people each have their own circle of friends and their list of people that they know. And being in it for 32 years, man, you'd be surprised I'll give you a story. There's a referee he ref the championship game, actually. And every time I see him, I'm like, man, I know that dude. I promise he refed our high school games. And come to find out, me and my wife and I, we took my son to the Final Four experience here in Houston. And he's walking by on the sidewalk as I'm walking by. And I'm like, that's him. I said, I know
Mhm.
him. So my wife was like, well, why didn't you say anything? I'm like, I mean, it's been 21 years since I've been in high school. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
But him and I had a good relationship because I was kind of crazy on the court, right? My competitive nature I'm proud of it. I can't even sit here and lie to you and say it's something I'm not proud of, because I'm extremely proud of it. But it's why I'm not good at golf. but but so it just so happens that I see him as we're walking into the actual arena, and I say, "Excuse me, man, are you from Temple?" He says, "I'm from Waco, which is Central Texas. We actually have the same area code." And he's like, "Man, it's funny because when you walk by, I told my wife I know that kid. You know what I'm saying? And I've looked the same my whole life. So the we actually end up talking, and sure enough, he's Keith, the referee that used to ref my games back in high school. That was
Wow.
now refing the national championship game. And so that's how small the world of basketball is, and that's what it's done for me. And to extend it even further, becoming a coach is a whole different deal. Like becoming an assistant coach is one thing, and then that one seat over to becoming a head coach is a whole different thing. And so being able to experience basketball from all these angles actually is an inspiration for one of the books that I've written, but I haven't written it down yet, which is like the Fatherhood Playbook. Because that's
Mm.
what helped me in my once I actually became a father, being a coach helped me like not go nuts. Because being a parent is just building a culture, it's just building relationships, and it helped me have a relationship with my son where it's not um authoritative in nature, in that I don't have like reign over him. Just like your players, just like a kid, you practice, 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 and then you get on in the game, and you're like, we didn't practice any of this. Like I don't know, I I don't recognize a single thing that's going on out here, right? And it's the same thing with your kids, right? You teach them, teach them, teach them, and then you go to a parent teacher conference. And you're like, really? Like this is news. I don't
This is not my kid. Yeah.
so that basketball has played that role for me, and now, luckily, my wife understands my crazy, so she lets me watch basketball and like talk to her about backdoor cuts and weird things that she don't care about, uh, and how to like strategize against a 1-3-1 trap, whatever. Just real nerdy, right? Like
Ball to the
how to
middle of the
guard.
zone, but anyways.
Yeah. But she allows me to do it because she knows I got to get it off, man. If I don't, I'll go crazy.
Mhm. It's
Okay.
awesome.
I want to go back to something you said about how you wanted to be a preacher.
Yeah.
So and let's paint this picture. If you're a preacher, what's like your signature sermon? What would you talk about? What would the lesson be that you would flip with people?
Ooh.
That's a
And we
great question.
I think we all should answer this question. That's a great
I think
question.
so.
Sure.
You know what? I will
You
give you
first.
my very first sermon, because when my dad found out that I wanted to be a preacher, he was all in. Let me tell you, like I'm talking about like you. All right, so you know how back in the day there was these big like 8x11 Bibles with the thinnest sheets of paper that you would ever see in your entire life. But then my dad would go further and have like different versions of the Bible, and he wanted to read like the chapter in every version. And I'm like, bro, come on, like this is a lot. I'm 7. You know what I'm saying? Like this.
I'm 7 and I'm trying to play basketball and get
That's
out of the
it,
key.
man.
And
I
I
should have
think I
never
read
told you
18
this, because
Bibles.
now I
Yeah.
don't even want to go to church, let alone be a preacher. This is crazy. But he had me preach a sermon to the family, to my mom and him and my sister. And of course, my sister was just being a knucklehead, because we're only 16 months apart. But it was, God is what you ought to be. I still remember that. I have no idea why I remember that, but that was the name of the story, and it was from Exodus or something. I didn't really do the work to preach it, so I was just kind of winging it at the time. Which, I mean, some preachers probably do that anyway, but that's it.
Many of them do that.
But that would be it, man. Honestly, but probably as I get older, I think my signature message now will probably be, you can show me better than you can tell me.
Ooh.
Okay, tell us more. Like, what's the three kind of
So
takeaways from that one?
anybody can say anything, but the message is always in the movements, right? So if I can, you will get more people to try to figure out how you are the way you are than for you to tell them how they should be. So if you go into somebody's home and their house is an absolute mess, they know that. But if you walk in and say, "Hey, your house is a mess. Let me show you how to clean it," they're gonna say, "You need to get out." You know
Mm,
what I'm saying?
yeah.
As
Yeah.
opposed to you saying, "Hey, why don't you come eat dinner at my place?" And they see how your house functions, and then they ask questions, and now they're bought in. It's just the ownership of information that you knew that you was going to give to them anyway. So you can show me better than you can tell me.
That's strong. I love that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, indeed.
What about y'all?
Okay, Mandy, you up first.
I mean, my sermon would be about it's a sermon of sales. It is, you have to remove the stigma of sales. We are in sales in every part of our life. A great salesperson is a listener and an educator. And the sooner we remove the stigma of sales and the quicker we become comfortable with it, the more personally and professionally we will be in all areas of our life. That would be my sermon.
Hmm, That's good. I
Yeah.
like
Okay.
that.
All right.
Mhm.
For me, my sermon, maybe just like I think it's a simple saying. I've had to learn a lot about it recently, the past kind of year or so. But when people show you who they are, believe them.
Ooh, my mom says that all the time.
Yes, and
Yeah.
and and sometimes you get caught up and you want to say, oh no," or you ignore the red flags, as we say in the
Hmm.
space, and you can't do that. And I think that that's just a lesson that needs to be continually shared because we forget it and we think we're exempt and we're not. And
Yeah.
I think that would be one of my main sermons right there.
It's the potential vortex. Like you get caught up
Yes.
into
Tell us more about that.
Yeah. You get caught up into how you think that y'all can be together or how you know what it is. All right. So I don't watch much television outside of like absolute trash, right?
It's
Which
fun.
is I mean,
That's good.
you can watch the news and it's the same trash. But anyway,
Yes, it is. Go
so
on.
my wife and I watch Married at First Sight and complain about it every week, but we're like 9 seasons in already. So they we are invested. But the idea that people would get married just to be married as opposed to find the skills to be a husband or a wife or find a husband or a wife is what you're talking about. So they sit down and they're with these people for 8 weeks and they're trying to like weave through these bright red flags. So like, well, if we can just then we can be together forever. Like, no, you can't. Like, if you just met this person, you don't even know this person, let alone. So you have to take everything for face value. You can't like reach for shreds of potential for what? You know what I'm saying? Because then you end up wrapping your own, you lose yourself in their potential, and now you don't even know what you're presenting anymore. And that's just the vortex. If you just get sucked down into it to where you're just so lost in what could be that you're completely ignoring what is.
Amen.
And I give
Amen.
talk. I speak sometimes, man, and I tell what I used to tell my teachers because they would get so frustrated, like, well, they should know this. Like, well, yeah, maybe they should, but they don't. So what are we gonna do about them not knowing? Because should, which is one of my again, being want to be a preacher, I have a bunch of these little sayings, right? So should is profanity. Doesn't matter. Should doesn't
Mm.
matter. Should doesn't matter. What should happen, what should be, what should have been done, what should have been said. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is what is.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
should goes both ways, right? Should what should
Mhm.
be and what should have been, neither one of them even matters. You just have to deal with the process. And the process is dealing with what you see, face value, which is, we
Mhm.
try to be deep now because everybody's a motivational speaker on Twitter. But but the fact of the matter is you can only do as much as you can do, and you can only do what you're doing right now.
It's funny, my mom also always says, "Don't should on yourself."
Uh,
Like,
Mm,
coulda, shoulda, woulda,
I
don't
like
should on
that.
yourself,
Yeah,
yeah.
right?
your mom's amazing.
Yeah, that's
My
great. Yeah.
mom is amazing. We should have her on the show.
Another saying that I love is hope is not a strategy. That's one that I think Colin Powell first said, or I heard
Yes.
from him, and that is so
Hope
true.
is
Like
not a strategy. I like that.
it's not a strategy like those, but the potential vortex, like you get caught up in it, and you're just like, mm. I
It's
mean,
society. Society thinks that we should give people a chance while simultaneously judging you like nobody's business. Right? That's been the give and take of social media. Everybody has a voice, but then you get ripped to shreds for using it. So
Yeah.
Right?
So it's
Catch
a whole
22.
nother topic too. That's a whole nother topic there.
Mhm.
Like a principal. I want to go to the writing part
yes,
because
sir.
you kind of spoken to an existence already where you're gonna be a future author. You
Mhm.
do a lot of writing now, both freelance and for different companies.
Mhm.
Where does your love for writing come, and who are some of your favorite authors?
Man, thanks. That's a great question. My love for writing actually comes from being a shy kid, which you probably can't tell now. Um, but at one point in my life, I had no ability to express myself. But I've always been an empath, and so I feel things
Mm.
very deeply, but I couldn't express them, and so I would just cry, right? So I was a crybaby when I was a
Aw.
kid. Like
Aw.
I was that kid that if you yelled at him at the right time, I was definitely gonna cry, right?
Aw, that's
Because
sad.
I couldn't say, but that's not what happened. You know what I'm saying? And because as again that helped my parenting, but as and so that when I was a kid, I used to write. It's journaling. I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. And then that transitioned into poetry. I used to write. And that transitioned into rapping, like books and books and books and books of raps. But all of this is the same thing of just being able to get my thoughts off. And I really love um talking to people because I like hearing perspectives. Um, it forces me to stand on anything that I think I believe. And that's my passion for it. And it just once I had my son, my wife was telling me I should people used to tell me I should write books all the time, but I'm like, nobody wants to. What am I gonna write about? You know, like self-help books can be they probably could be 25 pages instead of 25 chapters, most of them. Um, but
Truth.
people belabor points for word count. Um,
Truth.
so so when I had my son and I wrote my first book and I just saw the power of literacy and I was an English teacher as well.
Nice.
And yeah, I was an English teacher in high school and I used to read these books and I'm like, I ain't gonna lie to y'all. This book sucks. Like it sucks. And I see why you don't want to read it because I don't want to read it. So you know what? Let's not. And we just do something else.
Mhm.
But we did not, excuse me, not read. We just didn't read that book.
Yes.
Mm.
And when I saw there was a brilliant my department head gave us a project toward the end of the year after the formal testing where the kids could pick from a list of books and then they could pick like 3 projects or whatever. Man, some kids read whole trilogies in 6 weeks.
Mm.
And these are kids who are like, "Oh, I hate reading." And
Right.
it's like,
Mm.
Right.
"No, you just hate reading this."
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And what that did though was that just sparked creativity for them to write. And I think writing is the freest form of creativity that you can possibly have, even beyond just speaking. Because sometimes when you speak, you kind of like try to either memorize something or go over your head. When you're writing, it's just coming out. And so when I kind of hold these little creative writing sessions, I tell people it's like a puzzle. Like you don't try to put the puzzle together with the pieces still in the box. You just dump the pieces out,
That's
and you put
right.
the corners together, and then you build from there. And that's writing has done that for me. It's just free, and I love it. It allows me to again while you're writing, it kind of you challenge yourself a little bit. Um, and so it just went from there. It's just gone from writing a couple things here and there, writing my first children's book that I thought this is cool and that'll be done, and then the second one, and then the third one, and then writing a chapter in another book. So yeah, that's
So
where it comes from.
I'm with you because when I write, I'm in a flow state. I am in a total relaxed 100% flow state. So I love that you said writing is creativity because it only provokes more creativity. I am like 100% down with that. Can you tell us about the books that you have written? Tell us the names of the books. Tell us
Mhm.
what they're all about. Because, Amani and I have each written one book, but you've written more than one book and you've got more in your brain. So tell us about
No.
those. We're nerdy authors here in one
Yes.
room, just
I
chatting
love
about
it. I
writing.
love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
The first book is so all of the books so far, the main character has been Bradley, and Bradley is my actual son.
Mhm.
Um, and his names mean a lot, right? And so he was gonna have my name regardless. And had it been up to me, I'd name him something stupid like Roscoe. But the Bradley is my wife's father's first name, and so the family name sticks. And so Bradley, The first book is Bradley Knows Everything. And it came when he was like 2. I mean, everybody thinks their kid is smart, right? But my, but he was always inquisitive. And if you have kids, you know that, whew, the rate at which they can ask questions is truly needs to be studied at Harvard. Because it's like, how do you get this many questions off in 5 minutes? Right? And it's just why? But when I was growing up, we weren't allowed to ask why to
Mm.
the 2 biggest entities in young black people my age and younger, I mean older, is the church and your
Yes.
parents.
Yes.
And you can't question God, and you can't question your parents,
Mhm.
right? And so at what point do I take a hold of this information? Like, I'm not asking why as a mode of disrespect. I'm asking why because I really want to know why. Like, what does making my bed every morning do? Okay, I'm just gonna come home and get back in it, right? Yeah. Why do I have to take a bath? This is stupid. I'm just gonna go play again. But then you get older and you realize it, right? And so as he's asking questions, I was fighting myself. Like, I was somewhere always in between. Like, bro, please, no more questions.
You make me crazy.
to,
Yeah.
to being proud that he could recognize things to even ask about them, right?
Mm.
And so the first book, Bradley Knows Everything, we were taking a walk, and as he learned things, he was so excited that he knew it that he just had to share. So he's like, "Oh, duck, oh, truck," and help me realize that with everything that you learn, there's more to learn. So there's literally a depth of knowledge to every single thing, and so you can never know everything, but knowing everything. In the last little stanza in the book is saying, the more you learn, the more you'll need to know. And
Mm.
so that book is us going on a walk, and then whatever he talks about. So let's say he says duck. It's like, all right, you see the duck. The duck has feathers. The duck has webbed feet. The duck has a beak, and all of those things have a purpose, right? And so that's just my inspiration comes from 2 things. One, reading. We've been reading to him since he was in the womb, but reading Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss is excellent, but you can only roozle fruzzle alamagoozle so many times for 40 pages at
Yes.
8:30 at night when you have a kid that you're just trying to just go to sleep, man. I don't care how you get there. Just please, enough. Right. And my son is the type that he will be 100% energy until he goes to sleep. There's no like in between. There's no wind down. It's just boop, boop. And so those long books were like, man, this is a lot. Also, learning about Dr. Seuss, you learn that those odd characters, like one fish, two fish, is really about diversity, right? But you
Hmm.
wouldn't know unless you know.
Mhm.
And as at his age, it needed to be more clear, right? It needed to be more concise. And so I made it a point to have a book that he could read, that he was excited to read, but that the characters looked like us, right?
Mhm.
Mm.
And
Yes.
so which led to the second book. The second book was Bradley Visits the Zoo, because a real story. We went to the zoo, and you teach kids that things look a certain way because it's easy. So whenever they see a picture of a monkey or a lion or whatever, or a cat, they all kind of look similar. But then you go to the zoo and you're like, that's that's not how monkeys look. Like, how is that a monkey and this a monkey? And how is
Mm.
that? Why does this have stripes and that has stripes and this has spots and that has spots, but they're not the same thing? Like, I don't understand. And he was genuinely confused. And then I realized that that's actually what we do to people in real life. Like, we teach people that people are homogenous because it's just easier to categorize that way. And so
Mhm.
you go out in the world, and like me, I had no real experience with Hispanics. And then I went to Corpus Christi,
Mhm.
and I seen people with blonde hair and blue eyes that spoke no English. And I'm like, what is this? And
Yes.
then
Yes.
Mhm.
even in my older years, I come to Houston and I just by nature say Korean when I'm speaking of people of Asian descent, because I come from a
Mm.
military town. And in my
Mm.
military town, that's what most of the, you know, soldiers went to Korea, brought back wives. back then in the 90s and early 2000s. And they're like, well, my last name is Nguyen. Like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Said, it's Vietnamese. I'm like, oh.
Mhm.
So then I had to start,
Yeah.
questioning myself and learning myself. And that's the same. Bradley Visits the Zoo is about him going seeing all these animals and noticing that they are different. And so the last stanza in that is, but that's what makes the world special. Everybody's different, even me and you, but that's what makes the world special, just like the zoo. So like
Ooh,
imagine
that's
going to
good.
the zoo and seeing all the animals look the same that are the same. Like every lion looking the exact same. That's no one would go. And so that's what makes the world that's what makes the world the same place. And that's what that one is about. And then the last one is just about the latest one is just about so his birthday is December 11th. So he thinks that December is like the month of Bradley, right? It's just
Yeah.
Amazon packages. I've stopped fighting grandparents, like mom, he doesn't need a recliner. What are we doing?
I need a recliner.
That's what I said. I said, I don't
Tell
even
your
have
mom
a
to send me
recliner.
one. Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, but I just, whatever, man. And so he's the youngest by far. And he's, my wife's side is girls. And then this one little boy just comes. And so they just buy him so much stuff to the point that it's like, all right, we can't fight the grandparents no more because we would say no and stuff would just show up.
Mhm.
So what me and my wife started implementing is a 1 in, 1 out. So you can get a new toy, but some got to go, right? And that was his way of sharing because he's the only kid. So sharing is not a thing for real.
Right.
And so that book is about both sharing and philanthropy and the good feelings that you both provide to yourself and others when you're willing to share what you have.
Mm.
And so the greatest gifts are the ones that you give, not the ones you receive. And that's what Bradley greatest gifts come from. Again, the second portion of my I'm sorry I'm talking so much. You guys are asking me great questions though.
You're the
But
guest. We want you to talk. Yeah, we
Just
love
keep going.
this.
Don't stop.
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the second part of my inspiration is if you go back and watch cartoons like we grew up watching, like Sunday morning cartoons, Saturday morning. First of all, Saturday morning cartoons are wildly inappropriate. So it's like, how did they get away with this?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just because we become more sensitive as a society. But if you go right back and watch the Disney movies, you realize that there's a lot of nuggets in there for parents. And because you gotta loop the parents in order for them to stay awake and want to take their kids to these movies. And so when I write, I kind of write to where the lessons serve dual purposes, to where like the first book, kind of covertly encouraging parents to allow their kids to ask those questions because it's not, as a parent, we don't ever want to not know the answer, but that's the perfect time to allow them to own the knowledge, or the
Mm.
perfect time for you to maybe even tap into something that they like that you didn't even know you liked because you have to research the answer now. And so now you have a common thread, because parenthood is just a relationship,
Mhm.
like these people just happen to be born to you. And it's not like something that you just, and you're ordained and you're just blessed with this opportunity to guide this other human, but it is a human, right? And so they have questions, and it's not an indictment on you as an authoritative figure if you don't know the answer.
Yes.
Um,
Ah, say it louder for the people in back. It's so
and
good.
so
So
yeah, and
good.
so
So good.
that's what that one was for. And the second one the zoo book is to encourage parents to make sure that we're not teaching within a box, that that everybody you meet is their own person, and though they may look similar, have similar character, or be graced with this false scientific, non-scientific label of race, that you don't know their ethnicity, right? And so their background or who they are isn't necessarily what they look like. And there's different quote unquote species, and there's different looking people, and there's different experiences within one group of people that you may be exposed to, right? And then the last one is just that getting stuff is fine, but if you're not ever willing to share at all, then you will never truly enjoy what you have anyway. Because most of the things that we have, the reason why we love it so much is because we're able to tell somebody, hey, look at this. And that's sharing, even if it's just sharing your excitement, then sharing and being able to give back in a philanthropic way. Sometimes we get caught up in thinking that we have to provide something new or that we can't give back because we don't have much. But if you can give what you have, then that's plenty.
Ah, yes.
So,
I
so I
think
got some follow
sharing too is
I got some
important.
follow-ups.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mandy. Go ahead, Mandy.
Well, I was gonna say, I think like when you just talked about sharing, it just reminded me of, not just sharing from a philanthropic and volunteerism or sharing with each other, but also sharing of yourself. Cause I think we're also in this state of people share what they think you want to see,
Mhm.
but there's so much powerful and sharing the bad stuff and being vulnerable and being your most authentic and sharing who you really are, because you never know if somebody's having a bad day and they may need to hear that to make
Right.
themselves feel better, or they may be having the same problems you're having with your kid or your wife or whatever. So I love the talk of sharing, and just building on that. Thank you for inspiring my brains that way. That was pretty
Mhm.
cool. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
good
Yeah.
for
stuff.
sure.
My follow-ups. First of all, Mandy, like I don't it's kind of hard to explain to you, but to have an African American male as your English teacher in high school is very rare. That's very rare. So props to you,
Mm.
TJ, for that because that is not common. And I just wanted to point that out for the people who
Right.
could be watching or listening because that is not common. And then I wanted to also, well, do you have any comments on that? And then I have a follow-up question on a different subject.
It's funny you say that because I've leaned into it because not only I'm a black man, I'm a black man named Tyrone. So okay, I'm black before you ever see my face, right?
I
So
didn't even think about that. That's
and
funny.
so
Yeah,
the,
I knew it
the
right
it,
away.
that name is important. So I go by TJ, but my author name is Tyrone Void Jr. And it's that for a reason. Because number one, when you see my name, you know the author's black. But also it's a legacy piece in that there's 3 generations on every single book. Tyrone Void is obviously my father. Tyrone Void Jr. is myself, and then Bradley is my son. And so that's something that can't be removed. And so I kind of took that into my teaching as well, because my very first teaching job was in Cinco Ranch, which is in Katy, Texas. And so
Ooh.
Cinco Ranch is kind of an affluent
Mm,
part of a suburb. So
mm,
Mm,
and so I walk in and I had entire classes with no black kids.
yeah.
mm.
And they would just look like,
I've never seen
That's
you
a whole
before.
that's a
Yeah.
whole other
Yeah.
episode. We
this
can
is
ask
odd.
so many questions.
This is
Yeah.
odd,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how I broke the ice is on a Friday, the first Friday, because I worked in sneakers right before. And so I wore a pair of shoes, Air Jordan 11 Concords. I wore them that first Friday, and it just humanized me, right? And so every Friday I would wear a different pair of Jordans because I had so many shoes back then because I wasn't married, no kid, whatever. So sneakers were all part of the budget, like they were on my expense report.
Yeah, on the P&L line
Yeah,
item.
for sure. So and so that made them speak to me. They're like, "Oh man, you da, 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 da." And then now we had that relationship to where I can pretty much, teach them whatever I needed to teach them. Fast forward to the next year, I went to a school that was on the other end of the spectrum, right? And I thought I understood the black plight until I went there. And this school was probably about 3,400 kids, and this is no exaggeration. There may have been 15 white kids in that whole school,
Wow.
right? And I was the same black English teacher. And I had a student say, "Mr. Void, black people don't read."
Mm,
And at that point, I could say, "That's wrong, blah, 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 blah." But at 14, all you're spewing is what's been deposited. Like at that
Mhm.
age, even though these kids these days have the most information to weed through, it's still the same 14-year-old brains that we had. And so they're just regurgitating. And so from then we kind of we stopped. Tell me what you think. And they go, and I'll make the story short. She goes, "Well, there's 2 types of black people." Okay, tell me.
mm,
There's again, this is communication. Communication is reading, communication is writing. So eventually I turned it into a writing assignment, but they didn't even know we were leading to that, but whatever. They so she goes, there's ghetto black people. This is God, this is a true story.
Mhm.
And then there's you.
Mm.
And I said, okay. So you're the ghetto black person. And she goes, no. There's three. Okay, there's three. There's three.
Yeah.
And so what it does, man, is it just, and one of the things when I show up to reading engagements, I show up as myself. I still have nice sneakers. I wear jeans or I wear shorts, and I show my tattoos because I want you to experience me. And more importantly, I want kids to know you don't have to sacrifice any part of who you are to be what you want to be. You can show up fully as yourself. And truthfully, there's power in presenting yourself in your fullness because then you don't have to think about nothing. You
That's
can just
right.
be who you are.
Your
And it's just,
skin is real. Like you're in
it's
your own,
freeing.
comfortable in your own skin.
It's
Yeah.
freeing, and there's
Yeah.
stories, and there's scars, and I can tell you what all of my tattoos mean. And there's a kid who yesterday I went and spoke at a high school, and the kid goes, "Man, I really wanted to meet you," and I only knew him for 30 minutes,
Nice.
and he never had somebody show up, because in education they want you to cover your tattoos, they want you to be
Mhm.
studious and tuck your shirt in and don't da 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 da. Man, them kids ain't listening to that because they one thing that kids have, specifically kids that are in, and this is black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Middle Eastern. If you're in a situation where there's poverty, you have a level of intuition that is a survival tactic, right?
Spidey
Like,
senses. Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you can't weed through your surroundings quickly, it could be dangerous. And so when you fake, they don't like it. Like they literally hate it. And so they don't even know why. It's just because they're uncomfortable with the lack of authenticity. But if you show up the same way, if you say sorry when you're wrong, if you're willing to have the relationship be symbiotic in nature, that you can learn from them, like they can learn from you, and you not take this stance that I'm the be all know all, and you should learn from me because I have the most experience. That you can't punish these kids because you were born sooner. Like it's not. That's
Yeah.
not. That's all it is. Like, yes, should they respect you? Sure. But as a black man, specifically a black man that's set in, meetings with all women, all the teachers were women, except for maybe one or two. And education in and of itself is a white female dominated
Mm.
industry. I had to be myself. I couldn't cave to discomfort of perception at the detriment of my own comfort, because I would show up and I wouldn't be able to deliver any sort of message to the kids because I would be so concerned about the perception of people who aren't even in my classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And how that helped with parents, believe it or not, because even parents were skeptical until they realized how much their kids enjoyed my class or
Yeah.
their kids were comfortable with me. And they realized that all I'm doing is delivering information and trying to guide your kids in the right direction. And truthfully, I felt like me being a black teacher gave me a superpower because we could have conversations that most people probably couldn't have. And we did. Right. So
And students listened. I bet they listened more because
absolutely.
you were being authentic. Yeah.
I could walk in and say, listen, man, do I care about Romeo and Juliet? No. Do you care about Romeo and Juliet? No. But we got to do it. So let's just do it and let's just make it fun. So we had certain people be characters, and now they're into it now. And some of those conversations like, all right, we need to reel this in. You can't say this in the classroom. But the thing is, do you want them to talk? If you want them to talk, sometimes they're gonna say things that you probably shouldn't say. Then you can tell them, hey, you can't say that. But thank you for being engaged. But I'm just all about creativity, man. I'm about creating a boundary, and then you can color however you want within the boundary. I have a coloring book, and at the beginning of the coloring book, it tells the kids, it's a little poem that says there's only one rule. There are no rules.
Ah,
Yes.
I love that. That's
Do
a good
whatever
one.
you want. If you feel like the sky should be pink today, color it pink.
Mhm.
We know the sky isn't pink. They'll eventually learn the sky isn't pink, but I don't understand the rush to impart realism on a creative brain,
Yeah.
right? We can reel it in later. Like even this, my son drew this.
Oh, cool.
He
Okay.
fancies himself an artist, right? And so I said, and I'll send y'all the picture of his actual drawing. And I said, son, I want you to draw me a picture of somebody sharing. And he drew this. And I said, okay, well, we're going to take everything he wants to do and try to dig into it as much as we can. So the back says, the greatest gifts are the ones you receive. And, 2 weeks before that, he wanted to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
I want to be a Tyrannosaurus
Me
Rex.
too. I said, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to figure it out. But what that led to was now he studies dinosaurs where he can tell you like 14 different dinosaurs and what they do and whether they're herbivores or carnivores. And had I told him, son, you can't be no dinosaur, he would have never thought to even continue learning about dinosaurs. And
Mm.
that's the risk we run as adults, to not let. And I feel like as adults, we need to tap into that creative, childlike brain at times in order to push ourselves forward, because the world is heavy enough, right?
Yes. Levity is everything. Yeah.
I have one more question for you before we get you to flip the script.
Yes, sir.
But you mentioned being an empath. As an
Mhm.
empath, how are you able to still be a successful leader, establish strong boundaries, stick to your boundaries, and have and not let people take advantage of your genuine nature, as which happens to many empaths in this world?
Oh man. I used to be a lot better at it than I am now, if I'm being
Mm.
100% honest. Phew. So if it's a work in progress, I think one of my weaknesses is I overthink, and being someone who feels deeply and overthinks, that's typically one and the same, but
Yeah.
it can be very paralyzing. And so you're like, all right, is this boundary necessary? Or was I too harsh? Or was I, this? And that's happened in my older age. And that's happened as I became a husband and as I became a father. And so I think now it's just me kind of reestablishing boundaries and not being concerned and allowing others to deal with their own emotions. Like if my boundary hurts your feelings, that's not really my issue. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
That's
Because it's
right.
not
Yeah, yeah.
That's not your problem. That's
that's
right.
that's for
Yeah.
that's for you to deal with and for you to discuss, why it hurts your feelings. And um how I tell you how where it kind of shows itself the most, and that's when I'm in my fatherhood. Because, and I learned this as a coach, it's like I can hear your side. I can see your tears. The answer is still no. I don't. I mean, thanks for sharing, but and I appreciate you being able to emote in this way. But the answer is no. That's it. The line is the line. I think is the best way that how I've been successful in the past, and not sticking to that line is how I've been unsuccessful in the past, if I'm being completely honest.
Mhm.
But being taken advantage of is I get this from my mother. Sometimes it's like I'll give people the benefit of the doubt, like you said, not listen to those first colors until I just can't anymore. And then that's when like the real me, who I wanted to be from the beginning, kind of comes
Yes.
out. And it's like, all right,
Yes.
look,
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? And so
Yes.
what I'm working on, man, I'm glad you asked that question, is having that boundary from the beginning so we can all just be pleasant, because you know what to
Mhm.
expect at this point.
Yeah.
For this portion of the show, we flip the script. So you can ask me a question, and you can ask Mandy a question, and then after we answer those, we'll close out the show and continue about our day.
Good. So one thing I want to ask, first of all, thank y'all for letting me blab the way I have been, but
Oh, we love
um
it. We love your blabbing.
the it, being an author, what made you decide, okay, I'm going to take this and put this in a book?
Mandy, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I've been writing, like when you said you've had journals since you were a little kid, I've had journals since I was a little kid. I have been writing since I could write, whether it was an observation about something or whether it was a fictitious character I made up about that observation. And so I knew, like in my bones, I knew I was going to write a book someday. I knew it. I just there was no question about it. I didn't know when that was, but the moment, the defining moment was I was working out. I was in the spin class. the teacher was screaming at me, not me, all of us, like, push yourself, blah, blah, blah. And it was towards the end of class. And I started crying. And sometimes that does happen in spin because you're just like, it's at the end. You're just I just started crying. And then I heard this voice and it was like, write the book, write the book. Now, the teacher wasn't saying that. That was like my inner voice telling me what I've always known. And sometimes in those classes, you're like, whatever, you're just feeling it and you leave, your endorphins are released. Well, that write the book voice over the next several weeks started and louder to the point where I felt like it was choking me, like it was suffocating me, that I didn't have a choice. Like it was like, Mandy, you don't have time for this, but restructure your whole life
Right.
and redo everything that you're doing just so you could write the book. And that's what I did for 2 years. And it was very difficult. And I'm really glad I did it. And I will write books now for the rest of my life. But it was something I always knew I was going to do. And when my calling came, I listened and I took action on it. Now it took a little bit of time because, we're living normal life and we all have jobs and spouses and dogs or kids or whatever that is, but I ended up doing it because I just listened to myself. So
Hmm,
that's where mine came from.
that's awesome.
I would say for me, as a DJ, full-time DJ, just wanting to first establish myself as a thought leader in the space, more than just a DJ, but show people that we are very complex humans. We don't have to like quadruple task all at one time, reading the room, planning a song, marketing, like all this we're doing at one time as a set. And I just wanted to share my story in the form of a book and around a DJ set that shows kind of how I came to be and what inspired me. And so that's what I did. As Mandy said, it took a long time. And the hardest part for me was the editing because you turn the book in, you think, okay, this is great. They won't make many corrections, whatever. And she tore it apart, but it was brilliant editing. So just really learning how to maybe take a step back from your ego and allow someone to help you and do that. Um, that's kind of why I wrote the book and my quick synopsis of my process there.
So I think my last question is both of you are kind of Monty, you talked about being a thought leader in the space, and Mandy, you're obviously a leader coach. What made you guys lean into your leadership? One, and then my second question would be, what would you consider your leadership philosophy?
Ooh,
Okay.
Amani, you go first.
First, what made me kind of lean in was probably a lack of just really leaders who came from the same background as me, who looked like me, and really were had the ability to relate to people on all levels, whether it be entry level, mid level management, or the quote unquote leaders in terms of the C suite people, individuals. Um, and then the second part was just what's my philosophy. I like a teamwork philosophy. I believe in like teamwork. Like I have a saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So that's kind of my philosophy. I try to follow that as much as possible in life and in business. And I just think that, like they say, when you walk through the door, you have to pull some people with you, so more people can come through the door, create more opportunities. And that's kind of how I have my philosophy for leadership, as well as when I'm teaching in the classroom, in the university level too.
I agree, Amani, you live by that. Like, bring more people with you through the door. I think that's your business philosophy too. I mean, I know I've been a blessed recipient of the,
Yes.
linking arms and walking through the door with Amani too. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um, yeah, I think my coaching journey started accidentally. I mean, I come from a long line of coaches. My dad was a soccer coach of everybody except for me, all the boys my age, which was awesome because I was super boy crazy. And and my mom was always a cheerleading coach. So like I think coaching's sort of how I'm wired. And then I was a coach also when I was in high school. I coached grade school cheerleading and gymnastics, and then when I was in college, I coached high school cheerleading and so I coaching's just a part of me. But I accidentally started my sales coaching business 17 years ago because a client asked me. She's like, "Hey, my business partner and I want to expand our business. We need help with sales. We need help with renegotiating some vendor contracts. Could you help?" And I was like, "Sure." They were like, "How much do you want to charge?" I'm like, "How much do you want to pay?" So it was just this accidental coaching business that started. And then the more I coached, the more I realized, like, gosh, I'm really good at this and I love this. And I'm I'm actually helping people. I'm helping people increase sales, establish new business lines, be more efficient with their business. So that to me, it's a little selfish because I got a lot out of it. But then I also still, people that I've coached over the last 17 years, I'm still in touch with that. Like they're still my friends. And so it's been a great friendship line too. But I think that also goes with the leadership style is when I was first a leader, I think the first time I was a boss, I was 28 years old. Like you should never let a 28-year-old be a boss. I was the worst leader. I used to lead by fear because I was fearful of losing my job or not being a good boss. And so my leadership journey really developed over time. And I have a client now who actually used to work for me 20 years ago. And, before we worked together, I had to, I told, not had to, I wanted to tell her, like, hey, I'm really sorry. Like, I wasn't at my best when I was 32 years old. And I hope you can forgive me for whatever I'm sure I did. And I'm different now. And obviously, she could tell I was different now, but I was a bad leader. And then I became a great leader. But in general, like my coach business and leadership life philosophy is just amplify everybody's genius. There is genius within all, and sometimes it's so obvious to everybody else, but we don't know it ourselves.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
with my coaching and with my leadership, it's always like I'm looking for the good in you. I'm looking for the good in your team, and I want to help you amplify that, share that with the world, and make sure everybody knows your clever creativity and that you are coming off amplifying yourself in a really unique way so you're completely undeniable and completely unforgettable.
I like that.
Great answer. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that
All
is.
right. So while they bang around me here, the final question we have for you, TJ, is
Uh-huh.
if you could go back to a time in your life, let's say maybe right as you are finishing your degree at like McMurray University, where you went to school, and give that TJ advice based on what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self?
Whew. I would say, um, you're not doing it right. You're not doing it wrong, but just keep doing it. Whatever you're doing, just keep doing
Mm,
it. Because what I've learned is, even in my own life, is most people don't fail; they just quit. And so we just have to. I'm learning that you set the goal, but truthfully, the power is the process. Because every goal that you reach, there's another goal to set. And
Yeah.
so the work in between is perpetual in nature. And so you might as well just latch in because it's not going to ever stop. There's no there. The only there is whenever you know that 2% more that you can share with someone else, and just have that chain of knowledge that you can both give to and learn from. So if I had to tell my young self, it would be just pick what you're going to do and allow the work to make your path for you.
that's good. That's good.
Well done. I think that's a mic drop moment. We'll put contact information for TJ in the chat as well as you see it scrolling across the screen. Um, just thank you so much for just amazing interview, just sharing your philosophy. I love the conversation we had about writing. Like I was geeking out, taking notes,
Mm,
just with basketball, talking about being an empath. Like I really, really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you. We'll definitely have to have you come back for round two. Uh,
yes.
This was fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
And
Thank you.
we are too, like we're in TJ, we should tell you this. In July, we are doing a show, Adventures in Business Juniors, where we
Really?
interview kids. I mean, any kid, probably under the age of like 21 or so, but like
Right.
so anybody that you cross paths with that you think is a young entrepreneur or a young business person, even if they haven't invented anything, but if they think like that,
Mhm.
and they're comfortable being interviewed. We're going to have a whole panel of junior entrepreneurs in July. So shoot us an email and we'd love to
Absolutely.
hear. I feel like you have access to a whole bunch of super young, awesome entrepreneurs. We'd love to talk with them.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. That's gonna be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So round of applause for you. Thank you very much. We'll do that.
Jazz hands. Jazz hands. Good job, TJ. It was awesome.
It was awesome. I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
stop
Thank you.
recording now. You're welcome. Stop.